Hello, my name is Kat Kalashian for Live and Invest Overseas, and today I am joined by an expat couple, Jackie and Joel Smith, who have found their new dream home in Greece. So I would like to first just get to know you guys a little bit. Could you tell us a little bit about where you were from in the US, I take it?
We were both born and raised in the state of Washington, in central Washington, which was predominantly rural as opposed to Seattle, which is
Hmm.
predominantly metropolitan. Jackie went to Central Washington State College there. I went to the University of Washington. And after I went to school over in Seattle, I returned or went to Yakima. We met there. She was working as a newspaper reporter there, and I was working as a lawyer.
And then we moved to the
Fantastic.
big state of Seattle and lived there for 30 years and decided that it was time to have a final fling before we got too old to have a final fling, and decided we would sell our suburban home there and move to Greece. And
Fantastic.
here we
So
are.
how did you end up with Greece as the top contender? Did you look around the world first? Was it always just Europe or was it just always Greece?
I don't think it was always Greece. We've had various fantasies during our work life. We liked Asia, Southeast Asia, a great deal. We traveled quite a bit, but came to Greece, I suppose, 4 or 5 times before we bought our home in 2014.
Oh, wow.
And it hit all the buttons.
That's fantastic. So, yeah, it's what we always tell people. You need to do a little bit of traveling, invest a little bit of time and money into finding those places that really speak to you like that, those places where you really want to keep returning year after year. And I think we all know there are places where you think, okay, I've been on vacation there, I've seen enough of it, don't necessarily need to come back. But then there are those places that you just have that kind of falling in love feeling, where you just feel you belong there for some reason.
That's it. And that we just kept coming back here and decided maybe it'd be good to have a base here and
Yeah. And
house and the
are you spending all of your time in Greece or are you still traveling a bit and spending time in other places?
Well, we kept a home back in the United States, but we're only there about once a year. And one of the reasons we moved to Europe is we wanted to travel even more in Europe. And we still do that. And we still have a love affair with Southeast Asia. So we travel there as well.
Good for you guys. I haven't been that far east myself. I've been to India, but I haven't gotten any farther. So it's still on my to-do list.
Well, that's
Did you
pretty
have?
far.
Yes, exactly. So how did your family take this decision? Was everybody on board or did anybody have any reservations or wonder what this crazy idea was? Where did it come from?
Well, I guess one good thing is we don't have a lot of family, so there wasn't a lot of family to react. Now, our close friends thought perhaps we were a little out of our mind. It's like, you've got everything here, what more do you need? And our reasoning was we didn't want more, we wanted less. So we wanted to slow back the pace. We wanted to have less traffic, less taxes, less big city push, and just get back kind of to our roots a little bit, I think.
That's such a great analogy. I don't think I've ever had anybody put it so succinctly like that before, but that is what so many people are seeking when they're looking for a new life in another country. It's not more, it's just different and less. In almost all cases, it's less because America, we do things big, we're used to having all the space in the world. And it can be a bit of a shock for people who haven't traveled too much in Europe or Asia when they realize how different the standards and cultures can be in terms of downsizing and apartments versus houses, etc. So you guys are exactly where in Greece?
Oh, we're from the Athens airport. We're 3 hours and 45 minutes away, via most of the way by freeway and the last 20 miles by a secondary road.
Okay. And so how did you discover this little spot that you are in?
We found it on one of our road trips, and in fact, we found it by accident. We were headed to a neighboring village where we had reservations, and we were hungry and pulled into Ios Nikolaos for lunch. Decided to look around a little bit, and as we left, he flippantly said if we ever got serious about moving, this might be on our list, and now we live here.
That's so great.
So that's how we planned ahead for this. This wasn't a
Yeah.
long planned out retirement plan or a goal to move to Greece. That was about how we did it.
Yeah, no,
Sure.
it's an important thing is to just follow, be a little bit spontaneous and follow those little diversions and digressions.
Well, we bought our house here in 2014 and moved here more or less full time in late 2017. So we knew what to expect a bit. And then in 2000, was it 2017? Yes, we went for our
That's
permanent residence permit.
Great.
well,
Yeah.
it isn't
Uh,
really permanent because you got to renew every well, 3 years now. They've changed it again. So we renew every 3 years, but it allows us to stay longer than the 90 days allowed in Schengen visa. So
Exactly, which is, yeah, if people aren't familiar, it's not something I want to get into the details of right now, but it can be very difficult for an American, North American, Canadian even, to spend time in Europe long term past 90 days, essentially. So that's why you want to get some kind of EU residency if you do want to spend more than 90 days every 6 months. It
Right.
gets a little complicated after that, but it's definitely worth it if you want to travel the continent. So, what was the most surprising thing? I guess you guys had some experience spending time in Greece before you moved there, but was there anything either before or after you made the move that you were either anticipating as being a really big culture shock or that you discovered afterwards as, oh my gosh, I did not see that coming?
Well, we're sort of old. We're not particularly talkable. And I can't think of any big surprise for us. There's been a number of little surprises. We're surprised about how long it takes to accomplish things that should be fairly simple, like getting the plumber out, getting an electrician out, having the government respond to what we think is a legitimate problem they should be taking care of, but they don't. So we usually take care of it ourselves. Was that a surprise? Maybe a little, but we were surprised by, oh, let's just say how prevalent the bureaucracy is here. People complain about the bureaucracy in the United States, but can't hold a candle
you
here.
know,
No, the United States is one of the most
delegation.
efficient countries when it comes to paperwork now because the rest of the world is living in medieval times comparatively.
Well,
Well, parts of it are.
and I do think that we brought our, American mentality, and that one of the examples we use is like going out for coffee. We have that Starbucks kind of impression, you got an hour and a half free parking. So you meet your friend, and in an hour and a half, you say everything you have to say, and then it's time to move the car and you leave again. And here, if you go out for coffee, it could be 3 hours long. You just sip coffee and then you sip the water, and then you maybe see another friend come by, or you think of something, the fruit man comes by and you buy your fruit off the fruit truck. And so you kind of got to slow down your expectations as well as your lifestyle, which I think we're getting into now that we've been here a while. But even at that, as he says, when the plumber says I'll be out in the afternoon in Greece goes until 10 o'clock at night. So we've had plumbers that showed up at 8 o'clock when we had given up on them.
Right, you're getting ready for bed.
Normal day. It was like a normal call. I'm here. I said afternoon.
Yeah, no, it's
completely Greek, however, because we're 45 minutes to an hour for coffee. If you're a real Greek, you can do 2 hours.
Yeah.
oh yeah, easily. Well, and the coffees are this big, not this big.
You drink a big glass of water.
Exactly. It's so important though to embrace that. And it does take time. It is an adjustment, but I love it's something that I have discovered as well in my life in Europe is that flexibility, you don't necessarily have a plan that you follow by the minute, you go and you see what pops up. The fruit vendor comes by and he's got some great strawberries. So you end up needing to then to go to the bank to get cash because the fruit vendor can't take a card. So it becomes this whole adventure. And I love that about rural life in Europe, the fact that you just have to kind of be less attached to planning, I would say, and go with the flow.
I think that is an excellent way of putting it. A lot of go with the flow.
So, how has your daily life changed compared to back home? You said you were well, so you started out rurally, but then you were living in Seattle, and that's a pretty big city. And I know Athens is a pretty big city, but you're still a bit a ways from that. So, how does your day-to-day, the day in the life, how has that changed for you guys?
Well, let's see. I guess a typical, not an everyday, but a typical day might be I walk to the beach to meet a girlfriend for coffee instead of hopping in the car to, drive to the Starbucks with the 90-minute limit. I walk through the olive groves. Our road goes through an olive grove and along the sea. So I walk the 20 minutes we meet. Then the husbands join us and we have another gab fest with the men and the women. Then maybe you go to the grocery store, and we do have supermarkets here. So it's not we're not completely just buying off the fruit truck, but we have supermarkets. You go to the hardware store, maybe you need a part. I think maybe we're a little more involved with day-to-day life. And here you've got to take your garbage to the municipal bins. You don't have garbage collection. We don't have postal service here. They've discontinued our postal service. It's a long story in Greece, but we now go to the neighboring village if we have a letter to mail somewhere. So then you wait for the post office to open, and we've sat around waiting because they open, but then they close so they can sort the mail. So you have to wait for them to reopen after they've sorted the mail. So your rhythms get a little slowed. I mean, when you come back and say, well, it's been 4 hours and we bought some groceries, had a cup of coffee, and stopped at the hardware store, and the day is nearly gone.
What now?
They're retired and not working anymore. It's less aggravating than it would be if you were on a schedule.
Yeah, as a mother with two small children, delays like that can really put a hitch in my step for the day. But I long for the day when I can just take these things as they come. And I try, but when you have kids and school schedules and things, it's not quite as easy. So I take it you guys do have a car where you're living if you're a bit rural out there. Are you
that's essential.
Yeah. We pretty much have to have a car here.
Okay.
Municipal transportation would be a bus twice a day, morning and, 3 times a day, morning, mid-afternoon, and evening to Kalamata, the big city. And we don't have any transportation between the villages unless you do a bike or a hike.
And so are there villages where you can go nearby and just walk around, or are you kind of stuck in your car when you're getting around?
Here in the Mani, there are several villages, but we could walk into Io Nikolaos, but that's a town with 2 restaurants, maybe 3 that are open year round. It's to go to Kalamata, it would be very inconvenient to try to go with the buses because there's only a couple every day.
Yeah.
Usually they're not on your schedule.
Yeah.
I've done it with friends. And we need to be in our village by 8 o'clock, and the bus comes a little bit late. Then it gets us to Kalamata about 10, and to get the bus back, you need to leave Kalamata at 1. So you've got a real narrow window of doing either shopping or fun or errands if you take the bus. So a car is pretty much essential around here. We do have had a nice bike path between villages until the storm took out a section of it this last week.
Wow.
So some people have biked. I wouldn't recommend that on our narrow little rural roads.
On the roads,
yeah. So.
Well, here's hoping that they get that bike path cleaned up for you pretty soon. So is there anything new that you've adopted, some new hobby that you'd never done before? Is there anything, I've heard some of the craziest things like the polar bear swims, people moving to Ireland or England and northern France and starting to get into those polar bear swims. But, so many people adopt new habits or hobbies or have new friends that get them into new things that they never thought they would do.
I guess our new hobby would be growing olives.
Fantastic.
We have about 17 trees, and when there's not a crop failure due to the Mediterranean fruit fly or something, we process about 40 to 50 liters in an average year.
Wow.
And sell some of it to the processor, use some of it, give some of it to friends. That's
Hmm.
definitely a new hobby.
That's so
And
fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that might be our new talent expansion. He was born and raised on an apple orchard in
Oh, so you have
Washington.
some experience.
So, so we thought he had some experience, but it's a completely different world when you're growing olives, when you're among people that have
Right.
grown olives for
Washington versus
generations.
Greece. There's a big difference there in climates.
But the other things that we've done, we've got involved with the animal rescue programs
Oh,
here.
very
And,
nice.
I think back in the state of Washington, we would send money to organizations. Now you're kind of more hands-on,
Hmm.
working on fundraisers, and you go and you serve cake, you cut cake, you bake cakes,
Nice.
you become involved, you adopt cats, and that's one of the reasons I keep jumping up. This cat adopt us. But now she is kind of elderly and isn't quite well this week. We're keeping her safe from the outdoor cat. So bear, bear with me. I promise we won't do this.
No worries. No worries. It's charming. So I'm curious, have you actually pressed your own oil or do you take it to a local co-op or a local grove that does it for you?
yeah, we take it to the local, it's not really a co-op, but it's a processor. There's probably 4 or 5 of them in the community, and he does it for us.
That's so
Uh,
cool. Just as a private person, I just come with my bag of olives and
yep, pretty
that's
much
so
so.
cool.
Some people bring in, 150-pound or 50-kilo sacks, and some of us bring in 10. He's happy to take on all comers, and he buys some of it, as I said, and we give it away. The rest of it or use it
Very nice.
ourselves.
So, the big question for me, especially for retirees, is the language question. I mean, we say pretty regularly that it's difficult to learn a new language, especially at retirement age, but it helps so much just to learn a few phrases. However, that's all in our own alphabet. When you change to Coptic alphabet, I mean, it's just, I can't even imagine how disorientating that must be, especially in the very beginning. You guys, I guess, had some experience coming to Greece as visitors before that, but how have you found the language question? How have you dealt with it? And what would your advice be to people that are very worried about having to try and understand and learn Greek?
I think I tell them not to worry because Greeks are so fluent in so many languages that we seldom find ourselves in a position of needing to be able to speak Greek. Now I'm studying Greek,
Yeah.
Duolingo, and after 2 years, I can pretty much answer in one word answers. I could not carry on a conversation with anyone. I can read some of the Greek
Yeah.
letters, but the signs, road signs are done in English and
Great.
Greek. So
Good
it's
to know.
like you don't need to worry about that. And when I say younger generation, I'm talking probably 50 and younger speak English. You
Hmm.
might hit a little yaya or a papu, a little older person that if they know English, they're not going to speak it. And you've got to know your basics, your good
Of
mornings,
course.
your thank yous, your pleases,
Yeah.
and some of the
I call
basics
it I
like
call it the five magic words. Hello, goodbye, please, thank you, excuse me, or sorry.
that's pretty much it. That's it. So if you've got those down pat, I would tell people not to even worry about it. I mean, maybe if you're on a back road somewhere, you would see a sign only in Greek, but we also have Google Maps that work real well here. So you pull out your phone and you
Yeah.
see where
I
you
mean,
are. So
how much easier is all this? I mean, even going back to 2014, you said you bought your home. I mean, that was the
oh,
beginning of smartphones.
much,
And
much easier.
nowadays, you've got Google Maps, you've got Google Translate, you've got all of these new resources. So, right, I imagine the road is a lot more smoothly paved for new expats as opposed to yourselves, who were a little bit more intrepid back in the day.
Yeah, I think definitely it is so much easier for people. In fact, there are programs. Several of our workers, some who are Albanian, have
Hmm.
come and they will have the program that you speak into it, and we talk to each other by speaking into it. They speak into it, we speak into it, and it translates. like we're United Nations or something.
Exactly. I've seen the
So,
commercials for that. My husband, who doesn't speak French yet, even though we've lived in Paris for many years, he was so excited when those new AirPods came out that you can have a conversation and they'll
yeah,
kind of translate in real time. I was skeptical about the efficiency, but we'll see where that goes in future years. I'm sure by the time my daughters are, going around doing this stuff for themselves, they'll be able to talk with a chip in their tooth or something, be able to
yes,
speak
yes,
whatever
yes,
language.
exactly.
All right, so kind of in that vein, the socializing aspect. So, you're in kind of I don't want to say a backwater, but you're not necessarily in a big expat hub or a big tourism hotspot. So have you found other English speakers, other foreigners? Are you friends with locals? Have you found an expat group?
Well, actually, you'd be surprised. We are in a tourism hotspot. We
Really?
are on the cutting edge. Our village swells in the summer, and not American tourists, but European tourists and
Uh-huh.
Middle East, Chinese. We have huge, huge numbers of tourists that come in.
Okay.
So we do have a real influx. As for our world, our little neighborhood, we have probably 10 houses on our street, and let's see, our representation would be, we would be the Americans, we have Germans, we have a woman from Peru, we have Greek, British, French. So we are, and I think we represent the area. In terms of expats in our area, I'd say there's probably, 3 dozen of us now in kind of the immediate area.
You're talking Americans.
Americans, a lot of Belgians, Germans,
Interesting.
Northern Europeans that come down. They kind of come to Greece like we would in the United States go to Arizona
Or Florida, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we go south, so they go south. And so there is a large number of them who've traveled here, for 25 years and finally decided to move here. So,
Oh, that's very
so
nice. So it's a very
we hang
eclectic,
out with
diverse.
expats, but that doesn't mean we're hanging out with a bunch of Americans.
Right.
It's like it's a little United Nations that we have. And we do have friends who are Greek and, just got invited to our first baptism for a Greek couple that we know.
Oh, that sounds
So
like a big deal. A big family event.
You've got to,
Congratulations.
get yourself out there. You can't sit in your house and wait for them to come. You've got to become part of the community and go have coffee and smile and, walk down the street, be seen. And
make yourself available. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jackie says tourism explodes in the summer. It's sort of a relative term,
Our area.
phrase. It's not. It doesn't explode in the sense of Mykonos or Santorini,
Right.
but for us, it really gets busy. And by busy, you might have to, I don't know, take an extra minute to get into town because somebody's ahead of you. It's no big deal, although the local people around here who don't have to earn a living like to complain about it. Oh my God, I can't go down. It's run over with tourists. But
that's always the way, though. But there's plenty of income brought in by that influx every year.
I think what telling things on that one was going into one of our caverns that we've gone into since we moved here, and it's loved by tourists and it's loved by residents. And we walked in, as we always do, saying, "Hi, there'll be 4 of us." And the waitress said, "Do you have reservations?" And we were so stunned. It was like, "Reservations? Are you kidding? We've never needed reservations." And it's like, "Well, we'll try to find you a table." And it was like, "Are you kidding?" But, so we are feeling the effects, but it's not Mykonos or Santorini.
Right. Well,
I would avoid the months of July and August.
Yeah, here's hoping that it doesn't blow up like a Mykonos or a Santorini.
Right.
Okay, so have there been any moments? I call it the moment of panic, and I have been an expat my entire life, and I never thought I would actually feel that moment of panic again as an adult because I dealt with it so much in my earlier life. But I did when I moved to Paris in 2018. I did have one of those moments of panic that you just think to yourself, I must be crazy. What am I doing? I feel so untethered you have the voices of your family or friends kind of in the back of your head saying, well, right, of course, you're over there by yourself. You're an island in the wind, why would you want to do this? Anyway, there are many scenarios in which that moment of panic might hit home, and it could be something as simple as going to the supermarket and not being able to, I don't know, trying to take something back to the store and not being able to return it, and you're just like, am I crazy? Have you guys had any moments like that have given you pause or doubt about your decision?
My answer would be no, not really.
I think my moment, and it wasn't really a panic, but I think it was when the enormity of what we had done hit me, the fall that we actually moved our stuff over. My college roommate and her husband came to visit. Mm-hmm. And as she and I were walking down the street in the village, she turned to me and she said, can you believe you live here?
This is your.
And it wasn't necessarily the most encouraging question. And it was kind of like, I went, oh my, I live here now.
I can't believe it.
But then I immediately went on the defensive and said, well, of course I live here. But every once in a while, now I look at it and I think, can I believe I live here? I'm so lucky to be here, and we are so glad we had the courage to make the move. But at that moment in time, it was just that little, okay, maybe we are too old. Maybe.
Yeah, I think most people can relate to that feeling.
Make you feel a little less untethered. I mean, WhatsApp, the internet, cheap international phone calls. And still having a place back in the States, I don't really feel untethered at all.
No.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And that is a big insight, is that, it's not a one-way street. You can do this so many different ways. It's all customizable. Keep a home in the US, get a home somewhere else around the world, travel, split your year. There's so many ways to do this. And I think people can get a little bit, can balk a little bit of the idea of just, it's all or nothing. But that's never the case. You can always go home. You can always buy a plane ticket whenever you want to see your family or your friends. And it's, and even if you decide after 6 months, a year in your new home, even if you realize, okay, this isn't for me, you've had a great adventure. There's really nothing lost, but a lot gained, I think, in most cases.
When people leave here who are our friends, it's usually one, they're missing their children or grandchildren.
Absolutely.
Or two, medical reasons.
Yeah. I also think that we gave ourselves a 5-year option when we bought the house. Like, if we don't like it, 5 years, we put it up for sale, we go back to life. We had the fling that we wanted to have. And so every year on our anniversary date of buying the house, it's like, you believe we've been here now, 11, 12 years. It's like the years have just gone by so rapidly. And I know that back when we purchased, we had all the questions that everybody has. Are we too old? What about healthcare? What about? I mean, if you wanted to lay awake at night, you could do it. And it's like, we've lived longer than we ever planned to live here. And here we are, and we're enjoying it, and are not consciously thinking about what. Now, we do live on a hillside, so we have stairs. So there may come a time that we're too old to do the stairs. But even at that, it was like, we used to say we'd move back to the States. Well, now we're saying, well, maybe we'll get a condo in Kalamata.
There you go. Yeah.
Still, there's still that option. Like, we'll get a one-story.
You gotta just go with the flow and see where it leads you.
It's like, we're not planning,
I love that, though, that 5-year check-in. And I've heard other people doing this, even about marriages, every 7 years we check in. Are we still happy? Okay, we're good. But to have that kind of, let yourself have that backdoor exit if you need it. I think it removes so much of that pressure that you feel like this is all or nothing. This is either the rest of my life or, life or death kind of scenarios. No, it's not at all. It's just taking it as it comes and seeing where it leads. All right. So we are just about to run out of time, but I would ask, as a final question, what would you say to somebody who is considering moving abroad in general, or perhaps specifically to Greece? What would your advice be if they're just coming to this realization that this might be an idea that they'd like to pursue?
in short, I'd say do it. You know, it's going to be a lot easier to look back saying, boy, that made a mistake doing that, than saying, gee, I wonder what it
I
would have been
wonder
like.
what could have
Yeah.
happened. Yeah.
What could have happened? What could my life have been like?
And I would say do your research
Yeah.
first and
Absolutely.
visit the place, not just in the summer when it's, beautiful weather, but maybe in the winter. Our standard advice is rent for a year
Yeah.
just to make sure, or rent
Yeah.
for your entire rest of your life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. No need
Yeah.
to commit with a
Yeah.
real estate purchase. I
No.
wholeheartedly agree. Renting is the good way to go. And that's also such great advice that you mentioned. It could mean coming in the winter when things aren't quite as perky weather-wise, but it could also mean coming in the summer when you've got your influx of tourists coming in that change the whole vibe, the whole personality of this place that you're considering living. This is the case.
At least here it's very, very hot in the summer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
In
Things
a very
things change a lot in a year, and it behooves someone who's thinking about it to experience a place at its best and its worst, whatever that may be.
Yeah. Exactly.
And is there anything that you would think that you could have done differently or would have wished you'd done differently?
Well, I think I might wish that we'd have done it 5 years or sooner. So we'd have more time here. You know, the time is ticking away, no matter what our attitudes are. You can have the best attitude, but you're still going to get old, and life is going to change. I think I might have done it sooner, but then on the other hand, I think maybe we did it at just the right time. We were ready to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. Life worked out. The timing was right.
Yeah, the timing worked out. It was just, that tipping point.
Yeah.
We took the tipping point when it came.
Well, thank you so much. This has been such a fantastic interview. I so much appreciate you guys giving up some of your time. And I know so many of our readers and watchers and listeners will be very inspired by these words. And I look forward to seeing you guys on our Live and Invest in Greece workshop on February 19th. And you can share your story with all of the many other expats who will be joining us for that.
Excellent.
Great.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.